reported a better than expected 1.1% drop in full price sales during the 9 weeks to Boxing Day. The UK's third largest clothing retailer after Marks and Spencer and Primark said it now expected to make a pre-tax profit of £370 million for the year to the end of February. That's £5 million better than expected. But Next also warned that the third national lockdown in England is likely to clip around £40 million from next year's profits. Joining me now to talk about this, Greg Lawless. He's a retail analyst at the stockbroker and investment bank Shore Capital. Greg, good morning to you. Really interesting to note that Next's store sales in early December were actually up year on year once the November lockdown ended.
Yeah, morning, Ian. Happy New Year. Yeah, very much. There was pent-up demand really coming through in early December before the tier systems started to impact the footfall. And, you know, I think the other striking thing from the Next numbers this morning is the fact that the online business grew very, very strongly, up 38% and nearly made up for the shortfall in the retail sales, which were down 43%. So they were able to pivot both in store while they were open and then online.
One of the key tricks for clothing retailers at this time of year, of course, Greg, is not to go into the New Year period with too much surplus stock, not to have too many items on sale. Next seem to have pulled this off.
Yeah, Next is what we call a best-in-class retailer, and they're really world-class at their stock management and their cash controls in the business. And I think the number was that they had 12% less stock going into the sale, and then obviously because of the tiering system that came in on Boxing Day, they had to pivot instead of to the stores, which is normally quite a big event and a footfall driver to the high street. They were able to pivot that stock to the online business.
As you say, a best-in-class retailer. I mean, this is a business that looks to have navigated the pandemic extraordinarily well. How have they done it?
I think, you know, going back, so they were one of the first back in March of last year, just before we went into lockdown, they announced their full year results, and who knew where we were headed at that moment. And then we've had various scenario guidance from them. But, you know, Simon Wolfson is a masterclass in the way that he runs his business with his team. And, you know, they've done some sale and lease back on their head office and their distribution centres, which has given them more liquidity in terms of headroom against their banking covenants. And then they've just pivoted, as I say, the business. If you remember back to last March, they actually closed their online business and made it COVID safe. So their sales went to zero through the first lockdown for the first few weeks, where other retailers pivoted straight to online. They made their operation COVID safe, and then they've been able to push the volume that was going through their retail stores into the online business. And, you know, structurally, that's a trend that we're seeing right across the industry.
I mean, obviously, it's a nightmare for analysts like you trying to come up with profit forecasts for businesses when there's this much uncertainty around. I mean, what's interesting about Next is they put out 3 different scenarios this morning.
Yeah, very much. So it's quite a wide range. So just reading the numbers, for FY22, which is the year ending January FY22, their base case scenario is 670 million, and there's a bottom end of 600 and a top end of 730. What they also assume, which I think is quite telling, is that their stores don't open for the whole of February and the whole of March. So basically, we're looking at a potential lockdown, and there could be upside to that depending on how the vaccine rolls out. But at the moment, their central scenario is that their stores, their retail business, will be closed for the whole of January, the whole of February, and the whole of March, which takes us up to the early Easter.
So obviously this marks the start of confession season for the retailers in terms of how they've done over Christmas. What are you looking out for this week and next?
Yeah, so you know, Next is a retail bellwether, and it's you know, to pardon the pun, a bit of a Christmas cracker and a bit of Christmas cheer this morning. We've obviously had Morrisons, which you've talked about. So we're starting to see the lay of the land with the food retailers. We had Aldi yesterday up 10%. So we're seeing the discounters doing well, the supermarkets doing well. Some of the themes we think we're going to see is clearly this online shift, and those retailers that can fulfill properly, you know, using best-in-class logistics like Clipper Logistics, some of the disruptors that are coming through as well in terms of online, so that, you know, it will clearly have been a pure play Christmas, and those high street retailers that were able to pivot towards click and collect. Interestingly, John Lewis, another retail bellwether, has decided this year they're not going to give us a trading statement, which suggests that they have found life pretty tough. Obviously, their stores remain closed through the southeast and London and Wales lockdown, and now nationwide over the months coming forward.
That's really significant what you said about John Lewis. I mean, in the past, this is a business that's given us a hell of a lot of detail around Christmas, and the shutters appear to be coming down a bit in terms of what they're telling people about trading these days.
Yeah, they used to give us weekly data, which was very interesting as an analyst and very interesting having worked in a retailer to watch their business. So they've kind of cut back on their disclosure, which is probably quite right. But with all due respect, they fanfare their TV advertising campaign for Christmas, and it's one of the iconic TV ad campaigns for Christmas. They almost have a premiere, and this year we're not going to learn how their stores or online business have done. Which suggests that that they've had a pretty torrid time. Sharon White, you look at the boardroom of John Lewis and you wonder who the retailer in that boardroom is. And structurally, department stores are finding life very tough. We've talked about Debenhams before, Mike Ashley's House of Fraser Group, and there is a role for John Lewis, but it's probably a more digitally led and enhanced business.
All right, Greg, we've got to leave it there. Good to talk to you as ever. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Well, still to come here on Inking Live. We'll be taking a look at the market.